Hi everybody, Steve here in Palm Springs, and today I want to share a story with you about something that happened to me many years ago, right at the very beginning of my career. What made me think about this was a comment I received just recently from a subscriber named Sherry B. Sherry B, 968, said she had two coworkers who died in their 60s before they were able to retire. And this was fairly recently, and she's been mourning the loss of these two very good friends. One of the friends was 64 years old, and the other was 63 years old. And the 63-year-old only had 4 weeks to go before they were retiring. I mean, how sad is that to work your entire life, 4 weeks away from the finish line? You're almost there, you're ready to retire early, only to drop dead 4 weeks prior to her big day. How sad is that? But even sadder is that that's not really that uncommon. I was looking online and actually found quite a few articles talking about the fact that there is actually kind of a spike of people dying just as they're ready to retire or soon after they've retired. So this is common enough that there are actually articles written about it and studies have been done about it for Social Security and insurance and I'm guessing life insurance. Companies that have a vested interest in knowing how long people are going to live or die, typically, and what the longevity is of retirees after they retire. So Sherry B's comment reminded me of something similar that happened to me really early in my career. Just a few years after I graduated from college, I was able to land a really good job. I'd only been on the job maybe 2-3 weeks when on a Friday it was announced that we were having a goodbye celebration party for someone in another department, someone I actually had gotten to know a little bit. In the few weeks since I started working there, was a department that my department interacted with every day. And this person was retiring after working with this Fortune 500 company for, 30, 40 years. This guy was turning 65 years old. The company threw a really nice retirement party for him. We had cake and lunch, and it was a very nice going away party, retirement party. I think they even gave him a watch, the traditional retirement watch, even though you're not going to need a watch when you retire. So I'm not really sure where that tradition came from. Maybe it was started as a joke, I don't know. But I remember thinking at the party that, wow, I'm just starting my career. I had just started with this company a few weeks earlier, and here this guy was at the end of his career. I think I was probably thinking about what will my retirement be like way off in the very distant future, wondering if I would have a going away party, a retirement party like his. So like I say, this was a Friday. We all went home for the weekend, came back on Monday, only to hear the sad news that he had died over the weekend. It's been so long since this happened. This was back in the late 1970s, and I seem to recall that he died from a heart attack, and we were all obviously in shock. I had only known him a few weeks, but still it was very sad and just shocking to find out that someone had just retired and the next day had died from a heart attack. It was something that I've never forgotten. It really stuck with me. And over the years, throughout my career, the strange thing is that I've heard of this happening, I don't want to say on a regular basis, but it's not uncommon at all. I mean, I've heard about it over and over. So I knew it was something that could happen and that does happen every now and then. And I don't know if we all talked about it at the time when it happened, but at some point, at least in my mind, I thought, well, his heart attack must have just been caused by stress. The stress of leaving a job, a routine, friends, something he had done for decades, and he liked his job. And then all of a sudden, to wake up the next day, and you have a whole new life, and maybe not a life that you're ready for, prepared for. I don't know I can't remember now if he had family. I think he was single. I don't think he had family. So maybe he was alone. He didn't have any hobbies, maybe not a lot of friends. I didn't know him well enough to know his backstory, but I guess I just assumed that it was just the stress and the shock of changing your life so dramatically from one day to the next that may have contributed to his heart attack, just the stress of it all. On the other hand, maybe it was just coincidental. Maybe he would have had a heart attack that day, even if he hadn't retired, I don't know. It wasn't something I was ever worried about because throughout my career, throughout my working life, from the very beginning, I always just said, I don't plan to ever retire. I loved my job. I loved my work. I loved working. I'm not sure why I never really wanted to retire, never thought about it, never really It was just in my mind. I just thought, well, I'm just going to work until I'm 100. I'm going to work until the day I die, whatever, whichever comes first. Then I met Jim, and I think maybe over the years, he really changed my mind about retirement. So when I met him, he was working, had a very good job. And I think I probably told him, I don't plan to ever retire. I'm sure it came up. We met in our 30s, and we do tend to plan ahead on a lot of things. And so at some point, we started talking about retirement, and he told me that he was born ready to retire. So from his very first job, the very first job he ever got out of college, from day one, he was ready to retire. He never liked to work. He was very good at what he did. He was an accountant, a CPA, and just has a brain for numbers, so it came easy to him. And there's a huge demand for what he did, so he always had job security and always had a good job. He never liked working. It didn't give him any value. It didn't give him any pleasure. It didn't provide anything for him that he actually found positive. He did it to pay the bills. He did it, like a lot of people, just to pay the bills and save up to retire as soon as he could. And he's not real social. So he also, he had friends at work, but he really rarely ever associated with anyone from work, away from work, where I was totally different. Everyone I worked with became my best friend, and I had lots and lots of awesome, great friends I met from various jobs throughout the years. And we always did things when we weren't working, then on the weekends or holidays or whatever, we would get together and do things. So I always had a lot of friends that I had made through work. And so for me, it was a very social thing as well. So there were just a lot of things about work that I loved, and pretty much nothing that he liked except the paycheck. So I think over the years, though, his attitude must have rubbed off on me a little bit, because I did get to a certain point. We both saved up for retirement. I wanted to make sure I had money in case I had to retire or was forced to retire, but I was never looking forward to retirement. It was just never something I even thought about doing on purpose. For me, it was just, I'm going to save up money in case I do retire for some reason, if I have to, but it's not by choice. And he wasn't someone who really wanted, even though he really wanted to retire, I don't think it ever really occurred to him, maybe because of when we were growing up and when we were working. Not a lot of people back then, I think back in the 1980s, maybe 1990s, were really actively saving a lot of money to retire as early as possible. Like today, you hear about people doing everything they can to retire by the time they're 50 or 40. And that wasn't a real big thing when we were growing up that I ever remember. I think a lot of it maybe started because of the internet. People sharing these things on the internet, and then all of a sudden somebody retires at 50 and talks about it and starts a YouTube channel about it, and everyone else is like, hey, I should do that too. Maybe I could do what they're doing and I could retire at 50, or at least earlier than 65 or 70. And so now it's a big thing where it seems like everybody wants to retire early. And if YouTube had been invented maybe 30 years earlier, maybe we would have thought about that too. Maybe Jim would have. I still don't think I would have. He might have been saving up and planning to retire maybe at 50 instead of at 63 when he retired. So now that I'm talking about this and making a video about it, in my mind I'm wondering subconsciously, maybe one of the reasons I didn't want to retire is maybe I was thinking about this guy on my very first job who died the day after he retired. Maybe somewhere in my mind, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I don't want to retire and then die the next day. So I don't recall thinking about that over the years, but who knows? Maybe that thought was subconsciously in my mind, which is maybe another reason why I didn't want to retire. I don't think so, but possibly. But I did get to the point when Jim was ready to retire, and we had both been saving the whole time, so we had enough saved to retire. And even though I didn't really want to and I wasn't thinking about it, I think after I saw what happened to my mom, I actually sort of had to retire because my mom had her stroke and I needed to take care of her for the last year and a half, 2 years of her life. And during that time, I wasn't able to really work at all. It was just too stressful, too difficult. She was my full-time job. And I think that's maybe when I realized maybe I should retire because I could have a stroke too at some point. And men typically don't live as long as women. So I'm thinking, I guess I was 63, 64 when she had her stroke, I guess I was thinking, maybe I only have another 10 years or so. Do I really want to work until the day I die? And so I really did start reevaluating. And I realized, no, I don't. I mean, as much as I love my job, maybe partially also it was because of YouTube. I really had started a YouTube channel on the side as a hobby, just thinking that if I ever did retire, I'd want a hobby, something to do. And then it actually started making some money, and I thought, well, maybe I could do this instead of the job I was doing. And then it was total freedom. I could work as much as I want or as little as I want on my YouTube channel, make as little or as much as I want. So I still could have some income coming in if I wanted to, even though it was a hobby. So I think YouTube really did help convince me that maybe I should go ahead and retire, knowing that I could have a little income and a little bit of a job on the side if I wanted to with YouTube. And if I didn't, I could just totally retire and do absolutely nothing if that's what I wanted to do, but at least enjoy the last 10 years of my life completely free of a job, doing a lot of the same things I did on my job. YouTube really does involve a lot of the same skills that I used in my previous job, so just in a different medium, in a little bit different way. So all the joy that I got out of working at a job, I still get through doing my YouTube videos. So I really love doing these videos, but I can just think of it as a hobby and just do it leisurely, as much or as little as I want. So yeah, I guess maybe Jim's influence, YouTube's influence, my mom's influence after she went from being just perfectly healthy. She was 82, she was 83, I think, when she had her stroke. But at 83, she was just as spunky and funny and active, and she was exactly how she had always been. I mean, no one would have guessed that she was in her mid-80s. So, I mean, she was really active and really healthy. And to see how you can go from one day being perfectly normal to just the opposite of that in just an instant, just like that. I think realizing that made me think, okay, maybe work isn't everything. And I think just the realization of those things made me reevaluate what I had always thought. And I realized, no, I don't really want to just be working for someone else until I die. I would like to have 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years to really just enjoy life. So that's what I'm doing now. And then I was wondering about all of you. I mean, how common is this? Is it as common as I think? Or has it just been a weird coincidence that I've heard about this happening quite a number of times throughout my lifetime? So I thought I would ask all of you, have you had similar experiences to mine where you knew someone who died the day after they retired or shortly after, a few weeks, few months after they retired? Obviously, when you retire, most of us are fairly old, and so it wouldn't be unusual to die a year or 2 or 3 after you retire. That would be, I'm sure, pretty common. But to die the very next day, or within a couple of weeks, that definitely is not as common. But Sherry B's story, I had actually never heard. I've never heard of anyone getting right up to just a few weeks, few months away from retirement and dying right before retirement. That I haven't heard before. So I'm curious, have any of you experienced that? Do you know anyone? I mean, I hope you don't know anyone personally. I mean, that's just so sad. But have you heard of people dying, like Sherry B's friends, right before retirement? If so, share with us in the comments section. And if you happen to be younger and you're not yet retired, and I know a lot of you watching aren't retired yet, does this affect your retirement planning at all? Does it make you want to maybe retire a little bit earlier, just in case? Or does it make you, maybe like me, make you not want to ever retire, just in case? I'm curious if any of you have thought about this. So anyway, I'm rambling as always, so I'll stop here and look forward to reading your comments and hope to see you all next time.